Hello and welcome to this information video about the BC Arts Council's Early Career Development Program. This video is intended for those who are applying as an individual to either the mentorship or residency component. If you're looking for information on applying as an organization to one of the other four components, please watch our other video, ECD Application Information for Organizations. My name is Erin Macklem, and I'm joined by my colleague Brianna Fabro, who co-facilitates this program with our colleague Michelle Benjamin. But before I hand it over to Brianna, I want to let you know about application assistance. If you are deaf or have a disability and require assistance with things like registering in the online grant system, creating and submitting your applications, or providing project updates, or submitting final reports, the Application Assistance Program provides a contribution to help cover support costs. You can find a link to this program on our website or in the comments below. All right, Brianna, take it away.
Thanks, Erin. My name is Brianna Fabro. I'm one of the program advisors for the Early Career Development Program. If you're applying with a performing arts practice, I'll be your main contact for questions and support. This includes music, theater, dance, circus arts, comedy, production, and/or technical. My wonderful colleague Michelle Benjamin, who couldn't be on this video, manages the studio arts applications in this program. This includes visual arts, media arts, and literary arts, as well as museums and community arts councils. Today, we're here to walk you through some of the most common questions we receive and help guide you through the process. Before watching the rest of this video, we recommend that you review the program guidelines. This document will help you understand the intention of the program, confirm if you are eligible to apply, and make sure your project activities align with what the program supports.
And if you still have questions after reading the guidelines, that's totally normal, and that's why we made this video. We hope that it will answer many of your remaining questions. So, Brianna, let's start with the program intentions. Can you give us a quick introduction to this Early Career Development Program and describe its intentions?
Absolutely. Early career development supports learning opportunities for emerging and early career artists to develop their artistic practice, engage in knowledge transfer, skill sharing, and reciprocal learning in their area of practice, and expand their experience, networks, and exposure in the sector. We'll talk about this again later, but it's important for you to understand that this program does not support the creation or development of new work or new artistic projects. This is a learning-focused program and not a creation-based program.
Great. Okay, so let's talk about applicant eligibility. Who can apply to this program?
Well, first, you must be working in an arts practice that is supported by the BC Arts Council. It's a long list, so if you're not sure, have a look at the guidelines. The list is on page 4. At the same time, there are some arts-related practices that we don't fund. So again, better for you to review this list in the guidelines, and you can find those details on pages 8 and 9. Some key eligibility pieces I'll mention here right now. You must be a Canadian citizen or a permanent resident, and you must have lived in BC for at least 12 months before you apply. You can't be a full-time student while in your mentorship or residency project, while your residency or mentorship project is underway. And you must have completed your basic training within 5 years of the application closing date. If you identify with one of the BC Arts Council's designated priority groups, that window is 10 years.
Okay, we're going to come back to the designated priority groups in a minute. But first, can you tell me, what do we mean by basic training? You say we have to have completed basic training. What does that mean?
Good question. Basic training is the learning and education you have completed that both confirms your commitment to a professional arts practice and gets you ready to work at a professional level. So basic training typically involves learning foundational skills through guided instruction or mentorship, where you have received feedback and critique to help you develop and deepen your knowledge in any given practice.
What are some examples of basic training?
Well, some examples of basic training could be traditional knowledge transfer from an elder or knowledge keeper, apprenticeship with a professional artist, or a degree or diploma from an academic institution. We often get questions from people who are learning, whose learning has been entirely self-directed. And so watching recorded online videos with minimal engagement or feedback, or participating in a series of community workshops would likely not be eligible. We do advise you to call or email us to confirm your eligibility. Also, if your arts practice is in administration, you may also want to reach out to us for a conversation. We do recognize that sometimes arts administrators may take unusual routes into their practice.
I have a pop question for you. I know sometimes there's confusion in this program about age limits. Is there any age associated with the early career development program?
No, there isn't.
Okay. We'll dispel that myth out there. No age associated with this program. All right, so back to eligibility as it relates to when you completed your basic training. So a person is eligible to apply to this program if they completed their basic training within 5 years of June 25th, 2025, which is when this program deadline closes this year, or within 10 years if they identify as being part of BC Arts Council's designated priority groups. What are the designated priority groups?
Great question. BC Arts Council's designated priority groups have been identified as applicants and arts and culture practitioners who are Indigenous, and that could be First Nations, Métis, or Inuit peoples, deaf or experienced disability, Black or people of color, or located in regional areas, which in BCAC terms means outside Greater Vancouver or the Capital Region.
And we've got links to more specific details around what outside Greater Vancouver and the Capital Region mean on our website, so you can click for more details on that. Okay, so if you identify as belonging to one or more of these designated priority groups, then you can have completed your basic training within the last 10 years and be eligible to apply to the BC Arts Council program.
That's right, Erin.
All right, and if you don't identify as one of the designated priority groups, then complete your basic training within the last 5 years and you're eligible.
Yes.
I have some more training and education related questions for you.
Okay, fire away.
Okay, so you touched on this earlier, but what if someone is still in school? Can they apply?
Okay, so as mentioned, the early arts practitioner needs to have completed their basic training in order to be eligible for the program. However, if you will complete your basic training within 6 months of the application closing date and before the proposed activity begins, then you can apply.
Great, okay. What if I'm someone who just loves to learn new things and I'm enrolled in courses for my own enjoyment that aren't related to my basic training in any way?
Um, Again, yes, lifelong learners can apply as long as their studies are only part-time. You can't be enrolled in full-time studies when the early career development opportunity is taking place. We want you to be able to dedicate the majority of your time and attention to the transformative activities you're proposing.
Okay. What if a person's education or basic training is in a different field of practice than what they want to propose in their application? Like their basic training is in one discipline, but they want to pivot to a different type of activity.
Well, if your basic training is in a discipline that differs from the focus of your grant application, your proposal might not be eligible. This program is not intended to provide basic training for folks who want to pivot or transition to a new field of practice. The focus of the application must align or make sense with the basic training you've already completed. We get that artistic practice can be fluid, so if there's a really clear rationale and a meaningful connection between your previous studies and your current proposal, it may be considered. However, applications based on unrelated fields of study will not be eligible.
Okay. I think I'm starting to understand the ins and outs of this program. Here's another eligibility question. What if someone is working in the creative industries or the commercial sector, like film and TV or commercial music or commercial dance? Are those practices eligible in this program?
Unfortunately, this program does not support the creative industries or commercial sector, as our focus is specifically on the arts and culture sector. So unlike the arts sector, the creative and commercial industries are service-based, where artists typically work with clients and receive direct payment for their services. In service-based industries, the artist rarely has full creative control. BC Arts Council supports art practices where the artist has complete creative control of their practice and projects. So examples of some of the creative practices that are not eligible include graphic design, fashion design, commercial dance, acting for camera. We have a full list of creative practices that are not eligible in this program, and you can find them in the guidelines. Make sure that you have a look in the section called Exclusions, What Will Not Be Funded.
Okay. And what about straight up creation? What if I want support through this grant to produce my play?
Sorry, Erin. This program does not support the creation, development, or preparation of new artistic works, including for performances and exhibitions. Early career development supports immersive and highly impactful opportunities with measurable learning outcomes that will launch the early arts practitioner forward in their career. The focus of this program is to provide a learning opportunity and expand the early arts practitioner's career experience and networks. Creation may be inherently part of the learning experience, but can't be the sole or primary objective. So if you want support to produce your play, while this is not eligible in ECD, perhaps there's a project you could propose where you work with a mentor to develop your playwriting skills or stage direction. Maybe it's a chance to learn dramaturge methodologies. And this learning will support you, and you can produce your play in a good way in the future.
Fair enough. Okay, no play producing for me. Moving on, let's talk about the different program components an individual might want to apply to.
Great idea. Individual early arts practitioners can apply for a learning-focused residency or a one-on-one mentorship.
Okay, tell me about mentorships.
The mentorship component supports early arts practitioners to engage in one-on-one learning through a mentorship with an established practitioner working in their art form or field of practice.
So, how might I go about choosing a mentor to work with?
I'm so glad you asked me this question. This is an important one. Early arts practitioners are encouraged to seek mentorship from a professional working or recognized in the art sector who they are inspired and energized to work with and learn from. This program is intended to support transformational opportunities. You want to choose a mentor who will help you transform your practice and career. Mentors must have relevant experience and capacity to commit to the duration of the proposed project. We basically want you to dream big.
Awesome. Okay, tell me about the residencies component.
Absolutely. The residency component supports early arts practitioners to pursue a learning-focused residency with an arts and culture organization.
So you say learning focused, so that means not a creation focused residency?
Yeah, that's right. No creation-focused residencies. They're not eligible in this program.
Does it have to be an established residency program, or can I work with an organization to create my own custom residency?
Yes, a self-designed residency is eligible. This would be something that takes place at an arts and culture organization where staff are leading and directing learning opportunities and knowledge transfer. So for example, an artistic producer participates in a 6-month residency at a theater company with direct mentorship from the artistic director and general manager.
Okay. So say someone has a great idea or opportunity to do a mentorship or a learning residency. What are some things that they should know before they apply? Let's start with the assessment criteria. Tell me more about that.
Sure, the assessment criteria are what assessors will use to score and rank your application. These criteria reflect the priorities here at the BC Arts Council, so understanding them will help you write a stronger proposal.
Okay, so get familiar with those assessment criteria.
Yeah,
What else?
you should have a look at the scoring guide. This document helps you to understand the significance of each element of the assessment criteria and is basically your window into the assessment process as it breaks down how assessors will evaluate your project. The scoring guide will help you to understand the priorities of the program and guide you through some of your application answers. In fact, here's a tip to support your application journey. Have a friend read your draft application and they can use the scoring guide to give you feedback.
Oh, that's a good idea. Cool. The scoring guides are relatively new to the BC Arts Council, so that is a great way to utilize them. There's two other documents that are important for folks to become familiar with. What are those?
Yes, that's correct. So first, the application preview is a screen-readable Microsoft Word document that includes all of the questions in the online application. You can use this document to work on your application offline and then cut and paste your answers into the online application. The other document is the application checklist, which is located at the end of the guidelines document. It's a super handy tool that will help you navigate through the application process and keep you on track of all of the pieces.
I love a checklist.
Yes. So Erin, should we maybe talk about money? I'm sure everyone wants to know about that piece.
Oh, I like money. I just don't like talking about money, but yes, that's probably a good idea. Okay, how do I figure out how to pay my mentor?
So mentors must be paid professional rates because they're spending time and energy and putting their expertise and experience into your learning opportunity. They're investing in you, in your project, and this should be determined through a conversation between you and your chosen mentor. Compensation can be listed in the budget as an hourly rate or as a lump sum, whichever makes the most sense for your projects, but be sure to include notes and to provide details or rationale for the compensation amount.
What about me? Do I get paid? Payment
Yeah,
for
of
me?
course. Yeah, absolutely.
How does that work?
Subsistence amounts are available to applicants applying for this program as individuals. Individuals can request up to $750 per week during their mentorship or residency opportunities. $750 a week is considered full-time. So a breakdown of this would be around $150 a day. So check out the guidelines to understand what subsistence includes. Lastly, I'll mention if you're working with Indigenous elders, knowledge keepers, collaborators, partners, or other types of contractors, there are recommended fee schedules available to you to help you to determine reasonable rates of compensation. We have some really great resources and links, again, in that trusty guideline document.
Great. So when I'm looking at how I'm getting paid for this, I'm not necessarily assigning myself a fee. That's what goes under the subsistence in the budget form there. Great.
That's right.
Okay. Other things that are part of this application. What about work plans? How do you suggest that applicants create a work plan?
Yeah, so in the application, there's a fillable work plan table that applicants will use to capture the timeline and all the activities and learning outcomes of their project. So if your project spans many months, you may consider breaking the timeline into monthly sections, or if your project is a number of weeks long, you may break the timeline down in weekly sections. Assessors are looking for a realistic timeline and clarity around what will be learned through the activities taking place.
Okay. Speaking of other support material type things related to the application, do applicants need to provide a portfolio?
No, they don't. Remember, assessors are assessing the impact and urgency of the learning opportunity you're proposing, and the focus is not on the quality of your work. However, if you're wondering what support materials you will need for the application, let's talk about that. So for the mentorship component, you will need to upload a letter from your mentor. We have questions in the guidelines that your mentor will need to address in their letter. This is a chance for your mentor to express their excitement to be part of your learning journey. And be sure to give lots of time for your mentor to write an enthusiastic letter so that you're not scrambling for these extra requirements at the last minute. And then for the residency component, you'll need to upload a confirmation letter from the host organization confirming the dates, activities, and commitments. This means you'll need to have confirmed your participation in the residency in advance of your application deadline.
Great. So if I got my confirmation of this residency in an email, can I upload like a PDF version or a screenshot of the email or something, or does it have to be formal letter?
An email confirmation is perfectly acceptable.
Great. Okay, general advice. Do you have advice for individual applicants who are applying to this program?
That is a great question, Erin. I love giving application writing tips. So, first one, assessors may not be familiar with your work. Specific practices, communities, cultures, so provide information that assessors will need to understand your project. Make sure to define technical terms or processes and avoid specialized or academic language or expressions that may be difficult to understand. If specialized terms must be included, provide a brief description or definition. If identity factors are an important consideration or context for your artistic practice, consider referencing them in the questions that ask you to tell us about yourself and your practice. Use short, clear sentences or point form is encouraged too, but should still provide answers fully when responding to each question. Word counts indicate the maximum accepted words. We do not require you to write to that limit.
So you don't need to use all of the words just because they're available to you. If you can say it in a concise way and have words left over, that's a bonus.
That's
Remember
right.
that the assessors are sometimes reading 50, 70, 100 applications. So, sometimes a little brevity can go a long way.
That's true.
Another tip I'll throw in there is get somebody else to read your application and have them tell you what you're applying for. That can really help get those thoughts, make sure that they've translated from out of your head and into the application in a way that makes sense. And it's particularly important for this early career development program where it is sort of a multidisciplinary panel. You're going to have folks reading your application if you're in the performing arts that are from dance, theater, music, kind of intersectional practice. And then in the studio art side, you might have somebody from a gallery, a museum, a literary organization, or a writer. Not everybody is necessarily going to be deeply familiar with your area of practice. So it's good to be clear and think about writing for that audience. Okay, great tips. What about, there's a question relating to working with communities in the application. I wonder if you could spend a bit of time talking about that particular question.
Yeah, there's that question that says, if you're working with people or materials from underserved communities or communities outside your own, what steps will you take to collaborate respectfully and honor ownership and protocols? How will the project provide meaningful and reciprocal benefits to these communities?
That's the one. There's a lot going on in that question. Do you think you could break it down for people?
There is. I'll do my best. Here are some prompts to guide your response to this question. So things to think about, who are the communities you engage with? What protocols must be followed to ensure respectful engagement? What are the expected benefits for each party? How will consent and ownership be handled? How will you be responsible and respectful? And, if you're unsure if this question applies to you and your situation, I would say that it likely does. We don't live or work in a vacuum. Therefore, take some time to really think about your intersections. And though that could be your intended audiences and communities, the territories that you're living on, the histories of your practice, and even who you collaborate with. You may also be wondering how to address the question in the application about safety and accessibility. So here are a few possible approaches. Consider what you need to feel safe and supported during this opportunity. Co-design agreements or create a safety plan between participating parties. Provide a timeline for reflection and review of your agreements and plans, and indicate how you will measure and update these plans if circumstances shift or change.
Fantastic. Yeah, that part about communities and identifying what communities you engage with, it's good to think about that in sort of micro, macro, like what is your geographic community? What is your cultural community? What is your community of practice in terms of your artistic practice? There's all kinds of ways that you can determine and define for yourself who the communities are that you're working with and within. Any last tips or advice you want to give to applicants, Brianna?
Absolutely. Okay, let's see here. Creating a compelling and impactful project is not an easy task. Um, a compelling project tells your story. We recommend using plain language and avoid overly complex descriptions of your activities. Your work plan should be realistic and achievable within the timeline you've proposed. Clear, well-structured, and plain language applications really do make a difference. Your goals and learning outcomes should be well-defined and show a meaningful impact on your artistic and/or professional growth. If you've included specific details in your written responses, make sure that those are clearly reflected in your budget, support material, and your timeline or work plan. If you're using discipline discipline-specific language, explain any terms that may not be familiar to a general audience. Remember, the assessment panel may not know who you are or much about your artistic practice, so clarity is key. And finally, consider the long-term view of your career. How will this opportunity contribute to your development, and how might it benefit the broader art sector and your community?
These are some great tips, Brianna. And that's a lot of information that we've just thrown out there to folks. We're going to wrap things up shortly, but can you just remind us of some key dates to keep in mind?
Absolutely. So this program has one intake per year. It typically opens mid-May and closes 6 weeks later, near the end of June. So this year, the intake closes on June 25th. Mark your calendars. Um, After the intake closes, it takes about 16 weeks for you to receive notification of the results. So keep this in mind when you're planning your project timeline.
All right. So in terms of next steps, here's some things that you can do when you're done watching this video. Make sure that you get registered in our online grant application system. Sometimes it can take up to 5 business days on our side of things to confirm your registration once you've done that. So don't leave that to the last minute. Get registered now. Visit the program webpage. That's where you can find the guidelines and all of those other supporting documents that Brianna talked about earlier. Mark your calendars. The application closes at 11:59 p.m. on June 25th. And as soon as it hits midnight, that submit button is going to go away. So make sure you've submitted before then. And remember, if you are a person who's deaf or have a disability, application assistance might be available to support your grant writing. So just reach out to us if you'd like more information. Thank you, Brianna, so much for walking us through some of these common questions that you get about the Early Career Development Program.
My pleasure. And to echo Erin, please reach out to us if you have any questions. Michelle and I are here for you. Wishing you good luck.
Awesome. Thanks so much, and thanks everybody for watching.